Gotta say, one of the coolest parts about the Brooklyn Nets is probably that their mascot is just a piece of equipment related to the sport. You know, I don't think there's not a ton of that out there. You know, it's not like the Detroit like helmets or shoulder pads or something. Like, I just feel like that's kind of an overlooked part of this. There are some, you know, pretty dumb mascots, but the Brooklyn Nets, I mean, might as well just be the Brooklyn Basketballs. Anyway, that's how you folks, that's how you do an intro. Because we're gonna be talking about the Brooklyn Nets today. You know, obviously a rather tumultuous season, just transactionally. You know, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, both out of the Big Apple. They bring in Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie. And now we have like a weird kind of mishmash of kind of interesting players that amount to a 500 record, maybe. You know, obviously they were, you know, they had a pretty decent record until the trades, and they were able to sort of keep it afloat enough to stay out of the play-in tournament. But ultimately, a full season of this team probably doesn't get you there. Might be in the play-in tournament, maybe it is 6, but their probably ceiling is where they were this past year. Of course, Mikal Bridges, sort of a revelation. No one really expected him to be able to produce as a #1 option to this degree. And now we know, and obviously they must value him quite a bit, because they reportedly declined a trade in which they'd send him to Portland for the #3 pick, which of course is Scoot Henderson. And you know, in my opinion, kind of a highly questionable decision, just because it's sort of, in that little interaction, is a microcosm of where the Nets are and their predicament in terms of, is this a team that wants to contend, or is this a team that should tear it all down? Now, the NBA is a zero-sum game. You know, there's only so many wins to go around. So when you have a lot of like win now mindsets and not enough like rebuilding mindsets, something's off, and you're gonna get stuck with teams like the Bulls and the Brooklyn Nets, where it's like, what are we doing here exactly? Like, should we give up things? Should we not? You know, Mikal Bridges would probably get you multiple unprotected firsts. Maybe that's more of a discussion for the trade deadline, to see kind of what you have for a whole first half of this season and where you're at, and you know, whether this team can win together. Now, they extended Cam Johnson, maintained, you know, kept the asset, so no harm there. 4 years, 108, relatively reasonable number compared to some of the more higher echelon contracts that are being signed with the new CBA and blah blah blah. Dennis Smith Jr., also kind of a sneaky signing here, as someone that's been kind of, you know, buried in Charlotte now, but someone who can contribute on both ends of the floor and run the second unit. Lonnie Walker also signed here, but you know, generally not a lot of change, which makes sense given the huge turnover that took place during the trade deadline last year. You also bring in 2 first-round picks, Noah Clowney and Dariq Whitehead. Clowney did not necessarily impress in Summer League. You know, he's one of the younger prospects, sort of a lean, tall, stretch 4'5", I guess, is kind of what you would picture him as in the NBA game, but you know, hasn't shot the ball particularly well in college. So, you know, if he can be more of a floor spacer, that makes sense, and then a rim protector on the other end. But he's going to be a project. Obviously, they have some depth at the position with Nick Claxton, Day'Ron Sharpe, but kind of thin there, and whether he's going to be expected to actually, you know, have rotation minutes, probably not. Whitehead, on the other hand, didn't play a ton in college, but you know, did show flashes, shot the ball pretty well from the 3-point line. So whether he can fit somewhere in all this mess, maybe. They're kind of loaded on the wings, so how they view him, he'll probably be another project that, you know, won't be expected to be playing, you know, huge rotation minutes right from the jump. And then, of course, you have this fun saga that they inherited from Philadelphia that goes by Ben Simmons. And it is that time of the summer where Ben Simmons looks really good physically on the basketball court. He's like hitting shots. Of course, Rudy Gobert is also hitting shots. Steven Adams is also hitting shots. Now, for whatever reason, you know, we always say, like, what do these guys do with their offseason? And I think they actually do work on their shooting in the offseason, but there's just that certain hurdle of the difference between working out and just, you know, shooting shots and actually in an NBA setting taking those shots and making those shots. And Ben Simmons has proven that hurdle has been insurmountable so far. Now, does he need to be able to shoot? Probably not, but does he have to have enough offensive confidence to put the ball up in the paint? Yes. And, you know, does he still have that defensive prowess of Ben Simmons of what feels like eons ago? Because when you think about it, if you get that Ben Simmons, you put him with DFS, Dinwiddie, Bridges, Claxton, that is a brutal team on the defensive end to have to mess with, and a team that could present issues in a playoff run. But obviously the kind of range of outcomes for Ben Simmons going into this season is so wide, you're not going to count on it. Like, no one's going to count on Ben Simmons showing up to any degree at this point, whether, you know, it's a physical ailment, it's an attitude problem, it's a mental health issue. There's just a lot of unknowns here with Ben Simmons, and you can't rely on that, and you can't really, I can't imagine you trade him. So that's just going to be a developing story throughout the year, and well, we don't know. So again, this is a team now, was rumored for Damian Lillard. I don't know if that actually came out of Brooklyn or just sort of like everyone was like, I mean, it makes sense, and it does, and they do have enough, you know, draft capital, but they don't have any of their own picks, so they're not really incentivized to lose. So it is sort of like, well, we can't really rebuild through our own picks, but maybe through trades. Like that Scoot Henderson trade was kind of an olive branch to be like, hey, here's a top 3 pick for Mikal Bridges. Whatever. Don't know what the avenue is. Come trade deadline, I think this is really going to be a team to look out for as either a buyer or a seller, because they have so many pieces. You know, I haven't even mentioned Royce O'Neal. You know, anyone in the market for a 3-and-D wing, which there always is a market for. Brooklyn Nets are probably going to be one of your first calls. Personally, I feel like this is the time to, with, you know, the East open, it is maybe a time to try and evaluate, like, what is our identity? What are we going to do here? Do we sell high on Mikal Bridges? Do we sell high on Cam Johnson, Claxton? I mean, maybe you see what you have in Clowney and Whitehead, but there isn't like a guy to really hand the keys over to either. So they're kind of just stuck in this, like, again, for the Knicks, I said it was elevated mediocrity. This might just be plain old-fashioned mediocrity for Brooklyn for the time being. But would love to hear an argument one way or the other. Maybe they should tear it down. Maybe they should go get Dame. I don't know. But again, what does that look like? Because then you're going to have to trade Bridges. But you'd want Dame and Bridges on the same team. Maybe the Scoot Henderson route's still available somehow and you salary dump. I don't know, man. This is a tough situation, obviously, but curious to see how Brooklyn looks in the first couple weeks and then what they do come trade deadline time. But would love to hear what you have to think about these Brooklyn Nets. What would you do if you were in the front office of this team? I'm curious what kind of avenues you take. But for now, take care of yourselves, take it easy, and I'll see you next time.